AP Literature Trimester 1 project by Mateo Castillo. So my choices of poems for this project were The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, which was made during the Romantic period. The Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe, made in the Renaissance period. Nothing Gold Can Stay by Robert Frost, made in the Modernist period. Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, made in the Victorian era. And What the Living Do by Mary Howe, made in the contemporary period. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe was published in 1845. The literary period which this poem was made in was the Romantic era. It's known for its Gothic tone and exploration of grief, despair, and the supernatural. Some themes that were explored in The Raven include grief and loss, as throughout the poem we see the speaker mourns the death of his beloved Lenore. Another theme is despair, as it reflects the human desire for answers to suffering. Also, madness. The speaker spirals into irrational obsession over the raven and the inevitability of death, which is highlighted by the raven's presence throughout the poem. Some key symbols for the poem include the raven, which helps represent the undying sorrow of the inevitability of death. Lenore, the actual person that the speaker loses, symbolizes lost love. The bust of Athena contrasts the speaker's emotional chaos with reason and knowledge, and the darkness and night helps emphasize isolation and dread. Some recurring motives throughout the poem include night and darkness, as it creates an atmosphere of anxiety and fear, and repetition. The refrain nevermore reinforces hopelessness and despair. The use of literary devices in the poem. The use of literary devices throughout the poem help the reader see a better understanding of the poem. For example, the use of alliteration, the weak and the weary, help create a sort of rhythm and a mood. Repetition of the word nevermore helps symbolize the inevitable despair, and the use of personification on the raven helps enhance the supernatural tone of the poem. The structure and the form. The poem is broken down into 18 six-line stanzas. The rhyme scheme throughout all the poem is A, B, C, B, B, B. Most of the lines ending in or, such as rhymes of door, Lenore, and evermore. Historical and cultural context. It was written in the Romantic period from the late 18th to the 19th century. It is Gothic literature, which emphasizes on death, melancholy, and supernatural elements. Some personal connection. Poe's grief over his wife Virginia's death helped influence this poem. The Romantic period focuses on emotion, imagination, and the beauty of nature. Some key themes during this period in literature are love, loss, and deep emotional introspection. Some prominent poets, William Wordsworth, John Keats, and Edgar Allan Poe. Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe was published in 1599 during the Renaissance era. An overview of this poem. It's a pastoral poem that idealizes the love and nature, embodying the Renaissance tradition of romanticized rural life. The themes throughout this poem include idealized love intertwined with the beauty of nature. The carpe diem, seize the day, embracing love and life's pleasure is also very visible. Our motive, nature depicted as a paradise. Beds and roses and thousands of fragrant poises help picture this motive. Some of the symbols also seen in this poem are material gifts, which help represent the shepherd's desire for everlasting love, and nature's abundance, which helps symbolize peace and simplicity in life. Some literary devices seen throughout this poem are imagery, hyperbole, repetition, and tone. The imagery shown throughout the poem create vivid descriptions of nature. Some examples of this are a gown made of the finest wool or the bed of roses. For the repetition, it helps the reader emphasize the undying love that the that Christopher Marlowe is trying to portray. The structure and form of this poem. This poem is broken down into six stanzas, each with 4 lines, with a rhyme scheme of A A B B. It helps reflect a rural tradition and simplicity. The steady rhythm helps mirror the peaceful life that is described throughout the poem. With its lack of structural complexity, it helps highlight the sincere appeal of the shepherd. Historical and cultural context. The time period of which it was made was the Renaissance and had a pastoral tradition, which romanticized rural life as an escape from urban complexities. The Renaissance influence that this had on the poem helped emphasize on beauty, pleasure, and joy in life, with celebrations of humanism and personal longing. The literary period. The Renaissance era spanned from the 14th to the 17th century, with a revival of classical learning and exploration of humanism. Themes of love, nature, and human potential were explored. Popularization of sonnets and lyrical poetries were very prominent during this period, and integration of intellectual and spiritual curiosity were as well. Nothing Gold Can Stay by Robert Frost was published in 1923 in the literary period of the modernist era. This poem reflects on the fleeting nature of beauty, innocence, and life, as it suggests that perfection and purity are only temporary and eventually will fade over time. Some themes, motives, and symbols. The theme of impermanence was very central throughout this poem as it focuses on the idea that nature and beauty, or so innocence, will never be something that is permanent. And it illustrates that perfect moments in life are only short-lived and eventually will go away. The symbol of gold helps symbolize that innocence that I was talking about. The motive of nature serves as a metaphor for the briefness of life and innocence, exemplified by the line, "Her early leaves a flower, but only so an hour." The most prominent literary device used in this poem is personification. As Frost personifies nature itself, it gives it a human trait which creates an emotional connection to the reader. The line "her heart is who to hold" personifies the nature struggle to maintain that beauty that eventually will fade away. The structure and form of this poem. It is a short and tightly structured poem and consists of 8 lines with a rhyme scheme of A A B B C C D D. The rhyme scheme helps contribute to the calm but also powerful tone, highlighting that nothing ever really lasts. And the message of impermanence reinforces the idea of nothing can ever remain. The historical and cultural context of this poem, as it was published in 1923, helps reflect the post-World War I era and its themes of fragility and impermanence. Some cultural shifts. The Roaring Twenties, in which this poem was made, helped mark a rapid modernization, urban growth, and societal change, which the poem helps mirror through the themes of fleeting beauty. The modernist period breaks from the traditional form and theme, embracing disorientation and rapid change. Some themes of disillusionment. Post-World War I poets like Frost explored this theme of disillusionment, the fragility of life, and the collapse of the American dream. Emphasis on the free verse were very prominent as the shift in writing occurred, and vivid imagery with poets rejecting romantic ideals were also seen. Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold was published in 1867 in the Victorian era. This poem explores themes of uncertainty, the loss of faith, and the decline of religious certainty in a changing world, symbolized by a retreat of the sea of faith and a rise of doubt in the face of scientific progress. The theme of uncertainty and loss of faith were seen in the decline of religious faith and symbolized by the sea of faith, once abundant but now retreating. The symbol of the sea helps represent both the eternal cycle of nature and the retreat of the Holy Spirit. The image of the waves symbolize a timeless struggle, adding depth to the theme of despair in a faithless world. Literary devices that were used in this poem were metaphors and juxtaposition. As mentioned before, the sea of faith symbolizes the disappearance of religion. Juxtaposition shifts from a tranquil tone to one of despair and mirrors the theme of lost certainty, reflecting emotional fluctuations. This poem is a free verse poem, as it lacks a specific rhyme scheme and mirrors the fluctuating emotions explored in the poem. There are four stanzas, each with a different tone, ranging from calm imagery to a somberness, culminating in a plea for connection. The scientific discoveries made during this time period challenged traditional beliefs, such as Darwin's evolution. This created a cultural shift from communal faith to individual doubt. The literary period, which marked the Victorian era, was a mix of a romantic ideals and social realism, exploring themes of doubt, faith, and the complexities of human emotions. The social and scientific change were reflected on industrialism, scientific discoveries, and their impact on society and individual beliefs. Poets like Alfred Lord Tennyson and Elizabeth Browning delved into human emotions and social issues during this literary period. What the Living Do by Marie Howe was published in 1997 during the contemporary era. This poem reflects on the complexities of life, exploring themes of morality, the passage of time, and the connection between the living and the dead, offering a contemplative meditation on the human experience. It explores themes of loss, grief, and the beauty of ordinary life. The central theme is the tension between mourning and the perseverance of life after a loved one's death. The motive of everyday tasks helps symbolize the fleeting nature of life, and the title helps symbolize the contrast between living with a hole in one's heart due to death, celebrating life despite grief. The literary the literary device of alliteration was used discreetly to emphasize key emotions, such as the line sink and swell, mimicking the rhythm of grief. It helps to reflect the poem's reflective tone and the significance of mundane task in the context of loss. This poem was written in a free verse with a loose and non-existent rhyme scheme. The lack and formal constraints create an intimate tone resembling a direct conversation with the reader. The long flowing sentences and enjambment reflect the ongoing flow of life after personal pain. This poem was published in 1997, reflecting the historical context of the 20th century, especially the AIDS epidemic. Inspired by the death of Howe's brother John from AIDS, acknowledging the stigma and the fear of the time was what helped make this poem possible. It reflects themes of human resilience and the need for compassion, particularly within the LGBTQ plus community during this epidemic. The contemporary period, starting in the late 20th century, was characterized by diverse styles and forms. The modern poets often broke from traditional boundaries, using free verse to reflect the complexities of modern life.